The American's Creed. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy in a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies. William Tyler Page. Good. Don't forget, we're reciting that in class, well, Miss Moranto, one at a time, on October 6th. So you have a little bit less than 4 weeks now to have that memorized, but we'll practice it every single day. Last week we talked about the fact that our government is made up of elected representatives, and it's their job to make laws that are going to help people in America to live better lives, and that whenever they do anything in an elected position, they have to have the consent or the permission of the governed. That's the people who voted them into office. So they can't just make a law that they think is right. It has to also be approved by everybody who's going to have to obey that law. That makes sense, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the next part of the American's Creed and talk about it. A democracy in a republic. Well, we've learned in history class what a republic is. And it's a form of government that is representative. That means that it has representative people who are representatives of the people who actually live in that country. And it has a nation, a leader that is called a what?
President.
A president. So a democracy in a republic. A republic is a form of government. And what is a democracy? Nobody knows what a democracy is?
Democracy are an important part of history.
It is, but a democracy has to do with everybody's say being equal. There's not one group that should have more power than another. There's not one person that should have more power than another. If you have a democracy, everybody's voice is equal. There's not one person or group that's more important than another. So in a democracy, everybody's opinion, everybody's voice is equal. One vote per person. Okay? It's not that one person or one group has more votes than another. So if we have a democracy, that means everybody's opinion, everybody's vote is equal. I might not agree with everybody else's opinion. I might not agree with everybody else's vote, but that doesn't make mine more important or better than theirs. So we need to keep that in mind. All right, the next phrase says it's a sovereign nation of many sovereign states. Anybody know what that word sovereign means? Who has their dictionary handy? Can look that up. Sovereign. Our God is sovereign, right? I see at the end of the word sovereign, the word reign, like a king reigns over his country. What does sovereign mean? Look it up. Look it up. Quick. Say it again.
Computer programs?
No. S-O-V-E-R-E-I-G-N. Sovereign. Sovereign. Do you know what it means? Did you find it? Oh, it ends with an N, but you want to look
Hold on just a second. Shut that. Okay, sovereign. Let's see if we can get it moved up. S-O-V, so you gotta keep going one more page. It's gonna be on this page somewhere. S-O-V. Oh, right here. All right, what does sovereign mean? Supreme in power, okay? So if it's a sovereign nation, supreme in power, made up of many sovereign states, that means that we do have a government that is supreme in power. All of the states have to obey the federal government. But each state can make its own laws and decisions that are going to affect its own people who live in that state. I don't know if you've noticed during this whole COVID situation, each state has their own ideas about what they can and should do to keep their state safe, to keep their people safe in their state. Have you noticed that on the news, how different states are approaching COVID a little differently? And then within our state, each county is able to approach it a little differently because it's a different group of people that lives in Mercer County than the people who live in Kanawha County, right? So when we say a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, the nation is the main authority. So our national government, our president, is the main authority. But each state has the ability to make its own laws that affect its own state. Okay? As long as those laws are not in conflict with the federal laws. The federal means the government of the whole country. Jackson?
What would be a dumb idea to approach COVID-19 is like buying all the ingredients for hand sanitizer and shoving them in your mouth.
That would be a bad idea.
And being like, okay, then I'm fine.
I put all these germ killers in my mouth, I'm good.
If I even get it, it's gonna die immediately.
Oh, yeah, that's just disgusting. Okay, turn to page 327. This is the page that I hoped you'd have time to read before we started the discussion.
Yep.
But I noticed that some of you weren't finished with your quiz, so it's okay. We're still talking about the globe. But we're going to get more specific. The oceans and seas. More than 70% of the surface of the earth is covered with water. Think about that. 50% is half, right? We're pretty familiar with the terminology 50%. That's half. 70%, that's more than 2/3 of the earth is covered with water. The oceans, which are the largest bodies of water, are all connected, forming one vast body of water, which we often call the sea. A sea is commonly known to be salt water, right? I don't have a border between the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. They just run into each other. I'll show you what it looks like on a globe. Well, this one I can show you. This globe's a little different because it's out of date. This is a globe from back in the 80s, and the countries were different then. The countries I learned in school are different from the countries you're learning in school. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's pretty weird for me too. Okay, so if I look, here's the Indian Ocean, and here's the Atlantic Ocean. But look, the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean run into each other. There's not a borderline between oceans like there is between land. When I look on a map, I can definitely see a border for all the states, right? Even on this globe, I see a border between the states. There's not borders on our oceans. They just flow into each other. The Atlantic Ocean also flows into the Arctic Ocean at the top. The Pacific Ocean also flows into the Arctic Ocean. It flows into the Indian Ocean over here. And the Pacific even flows into the Atlantic Ocean down around the southern tip of Africa. Isn't that interesting?
Yep.
Okay, so our oceans do not have borders. They just flow into each other. The rainwaters that fall to the earth and the winds that blow over the earth, giving us our weather, all come from the sea or the ocean. And we're going to learn about that in science. We're going to learn about wind currents and how they affect our weather. 3 of the oceans surround the frozen South Pole continent of Antarctica. The Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Indian Ocean. Near the North Pole, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean merge into the Arctic Ocean. We just talked about both of those facts. We've got to practice locating the 4 oceans on a map. The Pacific is the world's largest ocean. Highlight that sentence. It's the first sentence of the 3rd paragraph. Highlight the first sentence of the 3rd paragraph. The Pacific Ocean is the largest. It is much larger than all of the Earth's land put together. It covers more than 1/3 of the Earth's surface and is twice as large as any other ocean. In many places, it is 10,000 miles wide. My goodness, that's vast. A large number of islands rise above the surface of the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic is half the size of the Pacific and about 3,000 miles wide. It has been very important to history because it separates the American continents, North and South America, from Europe and Africa. So highlight the bold word Atlantic in the first line of that paragraph, and then skip to the 2nd column and highlight the underlined part. The Atlantic separates the American continents from Europe and Africa. Yes, ma'am. The bold word Atlantic at the bottom of the first column, and then skip to the 2nd column and highlight the underlined part. You're learning a fact about each of the oceans. The broad arm of the sea between Africa and Australia is called the Indian Ocean. It's about 1/3 the size of the Pacific Ocean. The Indian Ocean is the world's warmest ocean, and that's the fact you need to know about the Indian Ocean. So highlight the bold words Indian Ocean. Highlight the bold words Indian Ocean. And then go to the end of that paragraph and highlight that it is the warmest ocean. The smallest and coldest ocean is the Arctic. Highlight that fact. It surrounds the North Pole. Most of it is frozen all year long. The ocean, Arctic Ocean, most of it is frozen all year long.
Because we'll see it as ice.
Isn't that wild? A sea is a large area of salt water that is smaller than an ocean and is partly or completely enclosed by land. Usually seas are connected to oceans, but sometimes they are inland, where they are enclosed by land. One saltwater lake is the Caspian Sea. It's the largest inland body of water in the world. And the Black Sea is almost landlocked. We'll practice with both of those seas once we get a little bit further into our study of Asia. But those two, we will notice the fact that the Caspian is landlocked. That means it's completely surrounded by land. And we'll also notice how tiny the opening is to the Black Sea through the Bering Strait when we look at it on a map. All right, other seas that we're going to be talking about and learning this year are the Caribbean Sea, the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Aegean Sea. Look at how that's pronounced and how it's spelled. Aegean. The Mediterranean Sea, the Baltic Sea, the North Sea, and the Norwegian Sea. You're going to learn a lot about geography this year. You're going to know all of those by the end of the year.
Probably.
Oh, I know.